right. First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming out today. My name is Mike Wilder. I'm the Community Coalition Coordinator for Wisconsin Jobs Now. I'm also the co-chair of the African American Roundtable, and I'm with the Coalition to Protect Wisconsin Elections. We are here today for one reason and one reason only. We're here today because tomorrow the State Senate is set to vote on multiple anti-democracy bills, and these bills promote pay-to-play politics. They deny folks access to the ballot. They make it harder for folks to register to vote, and they're trying to cram it through as quickly as possible. We believe that these politicians need to be focused on protecting freedom and justice, not decreasing the number of people who can vote. Let me repeat that. Politicians should be focused on freedom and justice, not decreasing the number of people who can vote. So I am going to give a number of people the mic to talk today. And first we're going to have Scott Ross from One Wisconsin Now speak.
Good morning. The Republican assault on voting is a clear and present danger to democracy in Wisconsin. The right to vote is a constitutional sacred right, and Wisconsin Republicans are literally standing in the doorway to prevent certain voters from exercising the franchise. Senate Republicans have outdone themselves this time. Not only have they revived legislation voted down in committee just a week ago, they managed to make it worse. Republicans are sending a clear message to working families, minorities, seniors, and students that their participation in our democracy is not wanted. Whatever the bill number, this is yet another cynical and shameful attempt to take away rights and manipulate the rules on voting from Republicans seeking to gain unfair partisan advantage for themselves. In November 2012, nearly 400,000 Wisconsin residents took advantage of early voting, and roughly 1 in 4 ballots cast in 2008 were cast early. Several local clerks, including those in the city of Milwaukee and Madison, responsible for administering elections, offered extended hours to allow working people to participate in democracy and cast their vote after work or on weekends. Among faith communities, churches organize nonpartisan weekend voter participation drives to increase community involvement in voting, something this Republican legislation is designed specifically to end. Wisconsin has some of the best voter participation laws in the country.
That's right.
And we are rightly proud of that. And that's what makes this racist, elitist legislation to make it harder for minorities and working people to vote all the more shameful. Now, this fight won't be over when Governor Walker signs the bill. It'll be over when a judge rules this obscene attempt to restrict access to the franchise for minorities, the elderly, and working class voters unconstitutional.
Thank you, Scott. I want to get to the specifics here. We have Senate Bill 324. That would restrict early voting hours and ban the option of weekend voting, like Souls to the Polls, like Scott mentioned, that are organized by faith communities. Senate Bill 267 would make it more difficult for folks to register to vote early. Senate Bill 655 would repeal the current law that allows lobbyists to contribute directly to legislatures starting April 15th of election years, even when the legislature is in session. That is the pay-to-play bill. Senate Bill 202, which would require poll observers to be allowed to come as close as 3 feet to poll workers, despite the numerous complaints of harassment and intimidating behavior in recent elections. So, make no mistake about it, these bills are shameful. They have no business in the legislature, and the legislature should not vote in favor of these bills. Next, I want to call up Martha De La Rosa. She is the State Director for 9 to 5.
Good morning. I stand here as the leader of 9 to 5, a group of hardworking Wisconsin mothers and sisters who are trying to make a better life for themselves and for their families. The whole mission of 9 to 5 is to remove the barriers that are on women, mothers, and low-income workers. And that's why I'm here today in opposition of these coordinated sets of anti-voters, voter-suppressed, pro-special interest bills. SB, or Senate Bill 324, Senate Bill 627, Senate Bill 655, and Senate Bill 202. That would put more barriers on working women to have their voices not heard. Meanwhile, these bills would remove barriers for corporate lobbyists. That's not right. and I'm here to say Wisconsin women and their families will not be silenced. Members of the Coalition to Protect Wisconsin Elections are on a quest for a better world for our children and for stronger democracy. That requires we live up to our nation's creed of freedom and justice for all. I mean, what part of freedom and justice for all don't these politicians get? Voting early is a necessity. It is a necessity in the working class. This process should be simple and readily available for many working families all across the state. Sometimes the weekends is the only time that 9 to 5 members and other working families and other working women are able to take that moment to vote. And now politicians are trying to deny us this opportunity, remove that, and cause more barriers for us to do so. Working women of this state don't have time for the political tricks and the voting hurdles. Our votes need to be heard. We have too much at stake and too much on the line. Just moments ago, I stopped at the information desk and I bought a postcard. And that postcard had a beautiful image. It had a picture of a 3-ton, 15.5-foot bronze statue. We know her as Lady Forward. This symbolic figure I want to mention today to our politicians as a reminder. Why put forth these regressive policies, these hurdles to stop people from exercising their right?
That's right.
Why not put forth legislation that's going to move our state forward? Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. If you folks can notice, everybody in the crowd, we have folks behind me with tape over their mouths. So that's symbolic because what the legislator is trying to do is just that. They're trying to silence our voices, and we want to let them know that we're not going to stand for it. We want to let them know that democracy is a constitutionally protected right, not a privilege, and it should be open to everyone. I want to call up next Scott Fogle. He's with People for the American Way.
Good morning. I'm Scott Fogle. I'm the Regional Political Coordinator for People for the American Way. PFAW is a nonprofit membership organization focused on protecting voting rights for all Americans, fighting right-wing extremism in all its forms, and guaranteeing fairness and justice for all. For several years, PFAW has been involved in tracking changes in elections and campaign finance laws across the country. An objective analysis of this package of bills reveals that there's something darker at work here. Drafted in the dead of the night a week ago, introduced, heard, and passed in the course of a couple days last week, a reasonable person has to conclude just alone that SB 654 and 655 are really positioned to chip away at the people's voice, as is all of this legislation. Dark money has been a consistent presence in our elections, and the problem is only getting worse. When disclosure requirements are softened, when issue ads are aired without people knowing who paid for them, when internet activity isn't reported, when special interests can spend massively on bundling contributions for the purposes of influencing campaigns, when you allow a shield between the sunlight and political activity, what you end up with is a shell game where corporations, millionaires, and lobbyists can influence to a degree that is nothing short of manipulation of our political and democratic processes. Pay-to-play politics is what Republican majority here in this state is about now. Their friends from ALEC, Club for Growth, Americans for Prosperity, Wisconsin Manufacturers, and others believe in it as well. These bills collectively are evidence of big money being placed ahead of the people's voice. If we allow these measures to be enacted, if we continue to allow the chipping away at the people's voice, we lose control over our votes, over our elections, over our airwaves, over our water and our air, over our children's education, over women's health and LGBT rights, and over our freedom. As Senator Mark Miller said last week in the hearings, we should be promoting more disclosure, greater transparency, and more access to the vote, not less. Last year, under pressure from groups like PFAW, the provisions put forth in these bills were killed. Now they've been revived. The question we need to ask is why? Wisconsinites aren't dumb. We understand that these bills are crafted to allow more dark money to flow into elections and the suppression of the right to vote. They're crafted to influence politicians with campaign cash. They're designed to avoid the sunlight that cleanses. They are bad legislation. People for the American Way and our allies encourage the Wisconsin legislature to stop the shell game and return the voice of the people to its proper place by requiring more disclosure, more access to the polls, more options for registration and absentee voting, and true transparency in governing political activities and political advertising. We strongly encourage all members of the Wisconsin legislature to think long and hard about what you're doing with these bills. We encourage you to think about the kind of government you want. Do you want an open and free exercise of democracy, or are you encouraging a democracy that is for sale to the highest bidder? We strongly encourage the Wisconsin legislature to stop big money from buying our political process. The time is now to stop the problem. The time is now to vote no on these bills.
Thank you, Scott. To conclude, I just want to say that our call right now is for folks to call their state senators, no matter where you are in the state of Wisconsin. Let your voice be heard to your state senators and let them know that we would like for everybody to have a voice in the democratic process. We would like for our voices not to be silent, and we would like for everybody to be able to vote as they please. We believe that voting should be a constitutionally protected right, not a privilege. So, your voice is important. Call your senator and let them know that protecting our democracy and the right to vote is essential and important, and we will not stand for folks that would like to silence our vote and our voice. And for that, I want to, open up the floor for any questions from media.
Scott, are you saying you're definitely going to sue if this thing is signed into law?
We are certainly exploring all the legal options that would be available if this bill passes into law.
Which one is that, sorry?
324, the attack on early voting.
And why is it unconstitutional?
Well, because it disparately, we believe it would disparately affect minority communities in the state of Wisconsin. If you look at the statistics on who lives in the cities of Wisconsin, those are where we have our largest minority populations, and that is where the number of early votes are growing. From 2008 to 2012, we saw an increase in 17% of early voting in the city of Madison. 17% in the city of Milwaukee. We saw an over 8% increase in the city of Madison. And even, places, that are traditionally considered Republican areas. The cities are increasing their amount of early voting. That same number for the city of Waukesha, they had an increase of 26% from 2008 to 2012 in early voting, and 22% for the city of Green Bay.
Make no mistake about it. I saw Senator Glenn Grothman talk on TMJ4, and he said that the fact that early voting creates a disproportionate disadvantage among folks that live in bigger cities, that's simply just not true.
Yeah, and he's actually changed his tune. I mean, when he originally put out his bill on ending same-day registration, he said it was because of massive fraud. We did an open records request to Senator Grothman, asked him to produce the evidence that he had of fraud. He provided none. So now he's saying that, what was his excuse this time? Gosh, I can't even remember, but it was different. We put a press release out on it.
Any more questions? All right, thank you all for coming out today.